Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. The city's aflutter with excitement, awaiting the arrival of President Obama. Let me just first start off with I participated in a BBC World Have Your Say a session in the KICC. And it was really outside in. You can see from the photograph I'll post to Chris Karoubi, Darshan Chandaria, Tabitha Karanja, and some young, very interesting entrepreneurs. And it was a great conversation, and I'm grateful. We have the audio link up on the website in case you care to listen to it. I'd like to thank Zhang Zizou for today's interview for Phoenix TV. She came by the office. My macro thoughts are that you sell everything except the dollar. Home Thoughts, Times Live tweeted, "We've found another Earth." And that should be interesting. Apparently it is possibly the closest situation, atmosphere to what we have here. President Obama, "A change is brought about because ordinary people do extraordinary things. Where you are right now doesn't have to determine where you will end up." We had that wonderful trip last weekend to the Gari Dari Forest and Lewa and Sirikoi Lodge, and I'll put up a photograph of we were up in this sort of a pathway up at the roof of the forest. We were looking down, and I took this photograph of an elephant's skull. And the ranger said to me, "Look around, this is debris." And he says, because they always come to mourn their dead, and they get very upset. Also put up a photograph of Hannah, the ranger in the Gari Dari forest. She loves it. She loves the wild. Yesterday we had all kinds of drama outside my window. This was the advance guard, President Obama's advance guard of Ospreys. They landed just on the field in front of me, kicking up an enormous dust storm as they did that landing. And it was very dramatic. Everybody sort of ran out of their office to go and have a look at it, and I thought to myself, this is shock and awe of a different kind entirely. President Obama, I wrote about severally. On the 9th of February, I spoke about his oil and currency warfare. I called him an oil and currency warfare specialist. In the context of the new 21st century oil and currency warfare, the erstwhile community organizer, POTUS, has proven so breathtakingly proficient, and I'm inclined to the view that oil is about to collapse. There was a very interesting interview that he's done with the BBC, I think it was last night. Have a look at that. That link's on the website. And then for some reason I came across an article with drone doctors. And if there's one thing I disagree with President Obama, it's the intensity of his drone campaign. And by all accounts, they've thrown the Somalis into the dust in the last few days. This article is in Vice. When Adam Patterson watched live video feeds from US surveillance and combat drones hanging over the Middle East and Northern Africa between 2006 and 2009, it was like he was swimming in a swimming pool and someone was holding his head underwater. You're really not thinking at that time, why am I in this pool? Why is this individual here with me holding my head down? Patterson told me. You're thinking, how do I get out of here? You're thinking not so much strategically, but tactically. You're thinking about the task at hand, not so much what is surrounding it. I was in that mode, and that probably helped my mental health. Patterson is now 37, was a member of US Special Operations in Iraq and Afghanistan before he took a gig as a drone analyst for a private military contractor. For 2 years, Patterson would get up in the morning and walk to a steel building at the edge of an American military base in Iraq. The building was festooned with all sorts of satellite dishes, communications antenna, and surrounded by military vehicles, the Tactical Operations Center, where Patterson worked at the brigade level. Currency markets, euro, which topped 110 yesterday, is back below 109.50. Dollar index 97.29 when I looked last. Japanese yen 123.94. Swissy 0.9611. The pound 154.88. The Aussie, let me have a quick look, 0.7304. India rupee 63.935, South Korean won 1166.42. Quite a number of people getting bearish about the South Korean economy. Rial 328.70, target 4 from a while back. Egyptian pound 782.88. South African rand 12.50, looking for 14. Dollar index put up a 3-month chart. My one word is buy. And euro dollar 109.47. I'll put up a chart of that as well. I think you can sell that all the way down to parity. Now, commodity markets have been seriously roiled. You will recall in November last year I wrote the commodity super cycle is dead in the water. Holger tweeted Bloomberg commodity index hits a fresh 13-year low on metals rout as Chinese demand grew at the slowest pace in 2 decades. I said in November the unwinding of the super cycle will take gold below $1,000 an ounce, and I stand by that view. I'll put up a 1-month chart of gold. We're now trading at 1083. On the 2nd of June this year, I said I expect the price of WTI crude oil to head back to $50. At that time, it was trading at 60. And I said I still expect fresh 2015 lows below $44. And I certainly do. So I was saying then, early June, 2nd of June, and we had a big bounce then. I said it's a dead cat bounce, and I expect the price of WTI, which was trading at $60 a barrel as I write this, to head back to $50. We're below 50. And I said there's a reasonable chance we will still print fresh 2015 lows below $44 a barrel. Holger's tweeted oil returns to bear market, as I predicted. And then a very interesting report in Reuters saying energy producers will be hoping this Fibonacci projection fails, but spot WTI's 161.8% target, derived from the post-GFC high, is at $10.42. Get your head around that. And I'll put up a 1-month chart. We could have a horrible washout because the economy is slowing. There's a surplus of oil in the market. Holger also tweeted this diagram of the Brazilian real, which is now at a 12-year low, and my target is even lower. Interesting article coming out from Pew Research Center. I picked it up as it was reported on the Wall Street Journal blog. People living in frontier markets are considerably more optimistic about their economic prospects than those living in the developed economies. According to a study released today, the populations of 2 of the largest frontier markets, Vietnam and Nigeria, stand out as particularly optimistic about the future. But researchers also found that people in Ethiopia, which has only recently begun to appear on investors' radars, have extremely positive views on their economy. In Africa, for example, we found that in countries that have had recent strong growth, and especially in those that have been growing for years, people felt good about the economy. Among the frontier markets where people consider the economy to be doing well, Vietnam, Ethiopia stand head and shoulders above the others. In both countries, almost 90% of respondents are upbeat about their country's economy. Senegal and Nigeria come in a distant 3rd and 4th, with 60 and 57% positive sentiment respectively. A similar pattern emerges concerning people's hopes for the next generation. Among frontier markets included in the study, the most optimistic people were in Vietnam, where 91% felt upbeat, and those in Ethiopia and Nigeria, where 84% of respondents were positive about the prospects for the next generation. Least optimistic were people in Lebanon, Tanzania, Jordan, and Kenya. That's interesting. And Bloomberg is saying the world's most optimistic people live in Africa. No bad thing. Ali Bongo was Messi's guest, apparently. And Lionel Messi has been accused of receiving £2.4 million to lay a stone at the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations Stadium in Gabon as guest of the controversial President Ali Bongo. I like this photograph taken in the Okavango Delta by Ranger Diaries. Republic of Zambia has sold $1.25 billion of debt with an average maturity of 11 years, according to bankers involved in the deal. Offered investors a yield of 9.375% in dollars. Investors placed orders in excess of $2.5 billion for the debt. bond issue comes in the wake of warnings from ratings agencies Standard & Poor's and Fitch, which had both recently aired their concerns over Zambia's finances. Early this month, S&P downgraded Zambia's credit rating to B from B+, noting that the country's fiscal conditions have deviated markedly from expectations. Fitch also rates Zambia's credit at B, warning that Zambia could struggle to fund its increasingly large budget gap. South African all-share bounced 0.5% higher yesterday. It is up 4.95% year-to-date. Dollar around 12.50 area, but look at the chart I'm going to put up. I'm looking for 14. Egyptian stock market down 8.23% this year. Nigerian all-share down 10.22% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange bucking that trend, up 1.01% yesterday and up marginally for the year. Africa and America, the prodigal grandson returns, says The Economist, when Barack Obama touches down in Nairobi this weekend for the first time to Kenya. Of his presidency, he will be given a noisy reception despite security protocols so strict that his arrival date was not officially announced until the last minute. The whole nation will celebrate. Welcome posters, the height of buildings are in place, corporate bosses jockey with do-gooders for a spot on the rope line. Even more babies than usual are being named after Kenya's most famous grandson. American commentators too are excited, few have been able to resist the comparison with John Kennedy's presidential visit to Ireland. Yet whereas Ireland was leading America's way in the Cold War, even if nominally neutral, Kenya has been outright hostile of late. That Mr. Obama is visiting anyway shows a desire to bolster America's influence in Africa at a time when growing populism, Islamic extremism, and Chinese economic might are undermining it. His trip follows a visit to the White House by Muhammadu Buhari. After stopping in Kenya, Mr. Obama will also drop in on Ethiopia, saying the president so far lacks a signature achievement in Africa. Bill Clinton introduced the AGOA Act. President Bush, a big intervention in HIV and AIDS. China has replaced America as Africa's largest trading partner, saying Mr. Obama's African policy now largely focuses on promoting economic development and tackling Islamic extremism. Meanwhile, he has had to deal with a rise in anti-American sentiment in Kenya. The problem started when its president, Kenyatta, and 5 other prominent figures were indicted for involvement in the mass slaughter following an election dispute 7 years ago. China's open wallet is making Kenya and other African countries less dependent on Western investment, though they still seek it. A growing populism has also made relations trickier. In Kenya and elsewhere, elections are becoming more competitive as urbanization, technology, and anti-corruption measures shrink traditional patronage networks. Another interesting point. And saying politicians have to work harder to win supporters. Railing against Western imperialism is a vote winner in some countries and requires no skill on the part of the politician. And then it's basically saying, as well as security, aid policies now aim more directly at boosting American investors' fortunes, and American social policy aims on the continent. Power Africa is one of Obama's favorite projects. American diplomats increasingly talk of tying aid to good governance, economic openness, and liberal social policies. Last year, for example, America cut aid to Uganda in protest against a new law that would lock up homosexuals for life. All this adds up to incremental rather than transformational progress, and Mr. Obama can rightly be criticized for failing to make Africa a priority. Still, he can argue that he has renewed a good trade accord, is boosting electrification, and has expanded the number of training missions to fight terrorists. That is probably more than Kennedy did for Ireland. I said, there's been an extraordinary flexing of US power over the last few days over the skies of Nairobi. Country is aflutter with excitement. President Obama was challenged by domestic issues. US emerging from a vicious recession in 2008 in his first term. You can imagine how Fox would have reported the president cavorting around Africa. Is he the president of the US of A or the United States of Africa? Recession is behind us. The president has a tailwind in his second term, tapping into a deep well of political goodwill, in my opinion, and clearly is differentiating the US entrepreneurship versus China's government-to-government approach. And I think he will turn Kenya's head away from the East, back to the West. This visit will mark an important geopolitical reordering of Kenya's relations, I think. Kenya shilling back above 101. Nairobi all share hit a fresh 2015 low. It's now down 5.304% this year. NSE 20 down 11.208% this year, and at another fresh 2015 low. Finally, let me leave you with Anne Soy, who tweeted a BBC infographic mapping the use of hashtag someone tells CNN around the world. This is Kenyans on Twitter reacting to a report that we are a terrorist hotbed, which is actually accurate in some ways. Once again, thank you for stopping by. Plenty of excitement here in Nairobi, so let's enjoy it.